Great. Well, I think that was a pretty cool. That was a really cool first presentation. I think now Gaetan from our office is going to go through front end testing.
Let's do it. All right, guys. Hi. There you go. So I'm Gaetan Marmasse. I'm the director of engineering at Infield Digital. Today we're going to talk about automated functional testing. I'm going to try to keep it high level, not too technical, just end the night nicely. And then also, if you have some questions that are really technical, not necessarily the good guy, but I'll get your questions and I'll answer them later. But yeah, so we're just going to go over some context and challenges around automated functional testing, what we're doing at Infield, and a little demo and some thoughts, and maybe get some feedback on how you guys are running your testing, if you're doing any. I'm actually curious about this. So yeah, some context and challenges overall. I think it's pretty important just to mention from our perspective, there are like two main challenges around development and business for functional testing. The first one is, of course, we're running complex and big systems, as you may all be aware of. AEM is pretty complex. How it's built and also its infrastructure. So it's definitely a challenge on how to run tests on this whole big thing that's going on there. Also, sometimes when I say several cooks in the kitchen, they're like, especially some of our customers, they have internal people doing some work, different agencies doing some work, a front-end agency for design and styles, and sometimes a back-end implementer. And it's kind of hard also to get sort of a unified testing dynamic there. So that could be a big challenge on the development side. Another point is the projects that we're building are more and more dynamic and interactive, which sort of put a little more stress on make sure things are functioning properly, especially in different browsers, or responsiveness is working as expected and things like that. And another point is also, whoop, I'm sorry, is the consistency between the local instance of a developer and the customer environment. Being able to run tests locally on the functional side and the end user side of things, and making sure you're going to be able to run the exact same tests on an instance that's running on a big infrastructure on the customer side. Could it be QA, for instance, or staging? On more of the business side of things, business usually wants to stay consistent the way things run and make sure, for instance, you're building your list of tests as your sort of like this is my testing protocol, and I'm gonna build them up from here. But this is basically, I know if things are passing here, things are functioning properly as expected. So this consistency is important. They also want to be able to run tests on multiple properties and platforms. So obviously we're talking about AEM here, but most of the people I know are actually running also other type of platforms and properties, and for instance a WordPress blog or whatnot. So being able to have those tests and transition tests running on an AEM instance, and also continue the functional testing and the visitor journey to these other platforms is also a challenge. Build confidence in deployments and releases. I'm sure it talks to some of you guys, but anything that will build up that confidence when deploying and releasing new things, making sure it's going to work as expected, is also critical for business. And something also, last one that I call the wild marketing factor. So don't look it up on Google or anything. It's just a term that I came up with to sort of illustrate that at the end of the day, we're talking about a content management system and a marketing platform. So it definitely gives the ability for marketers to put things up, and a simple example is DTM or things like that, being able to put scripts up, and that could break the site or do things that are not expected. And actually, the challenge here is that it's sometimes in some organizations these things are being deployed in a release cycle that's different from the main code base and the way things are deployed in AEM. So what we've done is basically came up with a little sort of simple approach to it, and we've built a little framework based on Nightwatch.js, Selenium, and the browser stack that I'm gonna show to you. The idea is you build tests with a simple JavaScript-based language, and you run them on your local instance. As a developer, you will actually see the browser opening and running the test and all that, as Selenium will run that. And the interesting point is that you can also run the exact same test on browser stack, so on the cloud directly. And then you can repeat that, not from your local, but from other instances after that. So Nightwatch.js is, you can look it up, nightwatchjs.org. It's a Node.js-based end-to-end testing solution. Commands and assertions are made on the DOM elements, so that makes it very simple, especially in our at Infield Digital, where this is something we use all the time. So it's something we know very well, and we can just build tests very easily with. And Selenium, of course, I'd have to say it's the web driver version of it for automating browser tests. And browser stack, of course, there are others, but it's a cloud-based cross-browser testing solution that's basically going to run VMs on the cloud and run execute your script and then shutting them down. And the reason why we chose browser stack over another one is purely because so most of our clients are actually using it, so it sort of made sense. They already have their browser compatibility list sort of like defined there and running all the tests already, so we can leverage that, and they have the licensing and all that. So it actually works out pretty well and plays well with Nightwatch.js. So this is a picture from the nightwatchjs.org site. You can look it up again just to see the main feature. I'm just going to scroll through it. You cannot actually really see. So the main points are it has a clean syntax, as I said. I'm going to try not to get too technical. I'm sorry, but using only JavaScript and CSS XPath selectors. So that's something we're pretty familiar with. It has a built-in test runner. It speaks for us. It speaks on how we want our tests to be modular and reusable. So that was also a good thing for us. For instance, you can group or tag your tests so that you can have a test being part of the big chain that will run for the big test. But also because it's tagged as being component A, you can run it independently or part of a subgroup of another sort of like test suite. Selenium and cloud services support, of course. That's one of the main features. And it has JUnit XML reports as an output, which makes it really friendly for integration with continuous integration systems, for instance, or other systems. And at the end of the day, it's also reusable and extendable custom commands and assertion, which is also a big plus for us, and one of the reasons why we chose this framework. So how it works, I'm just going to show two things. I'm going to just show a little diagram on how it runs on a local instance, and I'll do the demo of actually both. But we've combined everything in one main runner, combined in the shell script, so it takes care of everything. We've separated the core of the framework with the actual tests that are being run. So it can have a different life cycle. We can obviously fix things on one and then have different repositories for different tests. And we've automated the Selenium standalone server that will run from the runner, as well as the browser stack proxy, which is also a big plus for us. I'll talk about it in a few seconds. So just talking about the local instance. So again, sorry for the size of the diagram, but the idea here is that there will be a manual trigger or a pre-commit hook or pre-push hook or whatever, however you want to do it, but basically we'll trigger the runner. And the runner is a bash script responsible for starting Nightwatch.js, and Node.js will be basically running it and basically grabbing the tests that it has to run, send them to Selenium, that would run as a standalone server on your computer, and then the tests are going to run on the defined browsers that you've defined for your test. And here's a little AEM thing where it's going to run on AEM. In our case here, obviously for the cloud-based version, same thing happens here. The only difference is it sends them to browser stack on the cloud directly, and the prior sort of operation that's happening is it's starting the browser stack proxy.
Question.
Yep.
Do you usually have your developers writing the tests, or do you have dedicated resources that are more oriented towards testing writing the tests?
We're trying to push our developers to write the tests because they're very simple to write. We're really trying to see if this would work in our environment. This is pretty new for us also, so maybe it's actually a good thing. And we would need someone to do testing purely and write the tests, if it's what you're saying. Right now, the idea is to let developers write their tests, and I think I'll talk a little bit more about this after too. Well, I guess I can just do a little demo of how it works. So in terms of, I'm going to pull my terminal, sorry, size it. The way the runner works is pretty simple. We're going to call a shell script, basically, runner.local.js, as I showed in the diagram. And the only argument we're passing to it is our demo folder, where we have our tests written and stored there. So we're just going to run it. And so I'm going to run it. I think it's based on geometrics. I'm going to just, I don't know if you've seen the background, but it's it actually beautifully failed. The first assertion did actually. But I don't know if you've seen the background. It's actually running the tests. Problem is it keeps closing my browser and putting it back up, so I can't keep track. But yeah, so here, like most of my assertions actually failed. Can't really read why. But the idea is it spun up my browser and ran the tests, and the tests I have are pretty basic. It's basically Geometrics Outdoors homepage has a gear section. Do we have a navigation on our homepage and things like that? So here. Yeah, we got one test failed, I think. I think that's what you get when you play too much with local instances. Maybe we're hitting the, I don't know, it's local though, it's not a network. So I shouldn't hit the 4502 walking thing. So I don't know what's happening. Okay. All right. Didn't work well. What I'm gonna still gonna do is, I think the other interesting part is running the same script on browser stack. So what's gonna happen is the same set of tests are gonna be basically my script is gonna open the browser stack proxy, so it can sort of access my local host through the browser stack cloud, and it's gonna run the test there. I think I have defined a pretty standard browser set and browser and operating system setup, so it should be should be pretty fast. So here's starting my browser stack proxy, and hopefully if it's slow enough, we could see the actual tests being triggered there. Oh, there it goes, and running live. And if it's not running live, we can still replay them. So we're gonna let it go for a few seconds. Yeah, so this is a Chrome 48 on a Windows 8 machine. Browser Stack offers a lot of different browsers and systems, as you may know, even devices.
Six one comes with its own framework.
Yeah. Oh, I have a slide for that.
Oh, you
Talk about it. No, this is a good question. It's called Hobbs.js is the framework they use. I think it was there since 6.0 actually. I think I have a set of 3 tests, so it's done. The first one, it's going through the second one. Again, I can just sort of like see it going. Sorry. And then the third one.
So do you have a way that it actually notifies you if it fails or not, other than just looking at it?
Yes. Yeah, of course. It has different things. It has for now, it has a standard exit. Basically, that's that we can read from. That's the first thing. So if the entire test, if there's any failure in the entire test, it exits 1 basically. So you can capture that from any of the systems. I think the main output is the genuine XML report. I guess that you can base you can get reading from and automated reading from. Yeah.
I guess more from the perspective of automation, if you commit, the test should be running, and then you should receive an email if it fails or not, or if it should be rejected.
Yeah. Again, I think
something like that. Or?
not really, not now. I think our approach to that is really, a basic framework, and it has an easy entrance and a standard exit, and then I think what goes after has to be determined. And I think I'm going to briefly talk also about automation and continuous integration. That's definitely something that we want to explore as a second step for this. Okay, so these tests have been running on Browser Stack. We can replay them. Great. We have a video. We can show them, to whoever, like the QA person can build up their libraries, or you can show them to the client and be like, okay, this was your tests, and here they are. This is Browser Stack. You can get a lot out of it. I don't know if it's worth me showing an actual test code, just to show how simple it is, but that would be something like this. Again, try not to, I didn't want to go into code, but that would be, for instance, 2 simple assertions or tests actually that are stored in a folder that you can organize as you want, as long as they have a naming pattern. That's test.something, and they're in the tests folder. And then you create a test, and then basically this one is pretty obvious. And again, the easiest thing about it for us is to be able to quickly run with a few lines, a simple assertion based on DOM elements. And here it's pretty obvious what it does. It tests if the nav wrapper element, DOM element, is present, meaning there is a navigation element. And then you can go much deeper. You can interact with a browser pretty easily. Yeah. Sorry.
So as part of that, do you find that because the developers need to write those tests, do you find the developers actually being more conscious of how they're structuring their HTML in order to facilitate the testing?
I think this is the idea for some projects, and again, this is really new and pretty maybe not mature enough to know yet. But the idea is to make people like developers more aware of the end products and the interaction with other things that are happening on the system. So yeah, definitely trying to get more consistency on that side. I'm not sure I answered your question actually.
Mainly because, like, not part of development, but part of a different perspective from AEM implementation. I'm coming from the perspective that, okay, we are trying to do certain automated testing, but we don't have anything to hook into because developers didn't really think that certain components need to hook into testing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if by making them actually develop their own testing makes them more conscious of when they're developing, they need to actually think of, oh, I need to be able to select this element on the page in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I should be doing the development in that view, not just because somebody needed to apply a style to it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point, and that's definitely the direction we want to try out, I guess.
I think from just to but I think from our side, part of it is getting it funded by the customers and building and having kind of its governance and having kind of a culture of testing, where as you're building components, that every component has a test suite. So as things are combined and as the pages are done, then there are questions about, like, what are your testing pages and how those tests run. We've had internal discussions about, kind of setting up style guides, internal hidden style guides that are actually going through and kind of unfolding all the functionality of the components that really lay it out and expose it and can force the entire build through every iteration. So we're kind of trying to figure that out. The first piece is to have that framework and to get that kind of written into, get that budgeted into the development process.
And also I think we're seeing a sort of like a thing going on with Sightly, where like component and templates development sort of like is now also a big part of front end development in terms of skill set. So we're also trying to sort of like rearrange like who's building the tests, and obviously like front end developers are most of the time they're building the markup, they're aware of the requirements, and sort of like know what needs to happen on a functional from a functional standpoint. So we're also trying to play well with that, as opposed to before before Sightly and all that. It was mostly like back-end developers were building components and just like doing back-end tests or integration tests, and then functional was done in another way. So there's an interesting dynamic that we're trying to play with here. Definitely is this is what we're trying to do.
Do you set up any special data for components before you test them?
I think so. The way it's mostly based off of content that already exists and that developers would pull for their current work, I guess. So I guess this is how they would do it for now. Like grab a content from a section of a site, or for a site, for an entire site, do their work, run the test locally, and then run the test on a dev instance that would have more significant and representative content on the entire data. Hey.
To go to Mark's budget point, how we've been able to do it in the past is being able to quantify the effect it has. So if you can show that you reduce defects by 5%, that's a big difference. And if you can show that you reduce basically the big circle of like BA, developer, QA, and then having to go all the way back to BA because I didn't know how this thing was supposed to work.
Yeah.
You can have a testing place up front.
Yeah.
Just show this is actually what it's supposed to do. That reduces the cycle as well. So I think there's two big things: defects, and if you have a tool like Jira or something like that, showing that when a story is closed, it's really closed. It doesn't have to get reopened and then go back to the BA to figure out how this thing works.
Yeah, very good point. little bonus that we sort of like we're having because we're using this these several tools. I think is obviously you can run tests in parallel, so which makes it faster and more robust. Definitely the use of a proxy mechanism for us is important to be able to run our local instances on the cloud to do browser compatibility, basically, for instance. Or most of the time we're inside client VPN, and that can be proxied through as well. The replay functionality for browser stack specifically, but I'm sure it exists for other cloud services for cross-browser testing. Being interestingly, you can replay your tests and replay an IE6 and Windows XP if you dare to see if it works. And again, reporting and standard JUnit XML. Hubs.js. So, since AEM 6.0, Adobe introduced Hubs.js as a UI testing framework, automated testing framework. It's actually built in. It got better in 6.1. It's getting. I think it will be better in even better in 6.2. You can run tests individually or one by one. They can be built alongside with your components. So a lot of interesting things going on there. It is great. In our case, it was we needed to be able to run some tests outside of the authoring interface or instance, and from the end user standpoint. So running it through a load balancer, through a dispatcher, or directly on a publisher, or things like that. We didn't want to have to run it on the author, although maybe there is a way with Hubs. It also felt much harder to integrate with continuous integration systems and cross-browser testing tools because it was, again, so built in. And but know it's there. And if you don't do any browser testing, or not browser testing, functional testing, it's a good way to get some tests running and going for your components. It's there. It's now documented in a better way. So better than no tests at all. And then talking about every company is different from one another, and some of them have test defined or no test whatsoever actually, and some of them have test defined that it sort of like moved away from as time passed, or that they forgot to build with new releases and things like that. So it's sort of like lost coverage. Short answer, each case, everybody is different. But there's a pattern, sort of like the step we can do to get back on track with this. The first one is catching up on test scenarios and make sure you come up, for instance, if you don't run any tests, make sure you come up with a list of core tests for functionalities, and that would be the most business critical test you can run. I don't know, making sure my contact form is actually posting and that I pass through client-side validation, making sure that I can click on my hero banner, that's not breaking, or things like that. My menu is working. Basic things that could actually, to go back to Drew's point, making sure that there's value for and measurable value for businesses is a good thing, and making sure that you build that foundation of tests. And then from there, maybe a second step, keep building up, keep as new releases come up, try to tie that to a process where each user story will be translated to a test, ideally. So coming back to developers that are developing things based on user stories, for instance, would be able to have a sort of like a one-on-one matching with a test, and that you would have your sort of like, this is the output. The expected behavior is now shown by a test. And of course, if you're up there already, fully automate, integrate with continuous integration systems like Jenkins. Being able to run them, depending on, being able to trigger the tests from continuous integration systems, or actually trigger build jobs after testing, things like that. Oops, sorry. And it's just some thoughts. Nothing new here, but one other thing we want to explore and sort of like tie to all the things we talked about is, what about just for fun, just provisioning cloud instances, deploy the code, migrate content maybe with a tool like Rabbit, run full library of tests automated tests, terminate the instances, and run the reports overnight, for instance. That's a cool thing we'd like to, just for fun, trying to be able to do, maybe with AWS or any other type of cloud instances we could use. Yeah, so to conclude, like, you know, this is our approach. This is what we've been doing, just to try to come up with a way to build those tests that would make sense for most of our clients, and that would be useful for us and easy to build tests, because tests are, you know, hard to get funding and hard to sell, and being part of your, you know, test-driven development is sometimes hard to achieve, or most of the time hard to achieve. So getting them easier to build and having some visual to it is definitely helping. And it worked out well. It works well for us for now because of the size of the project and the structure, what we're doing and the diversity of our projects and our clients. So far, it's working with the way we've structured our teams to build components and templates, for instance, to be simple. And yeah, we're just sharing it today with the community. Also hoping for some feedback. We had some great feedback from Drew and also some good questions. I don't know. Are you guys using any, you know, functional testing, or what are you doing in your environments? If you want to share this with the group, I'd be curious to hear about it. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
As a Sauce Labs user, is there something I should know about browser stack, like experiences you've had, reasons why we should maybe try them out?
It's Nightwatch.js in our case here is definitely compatible. Oh, sorry, you were answering that. I thought you were answering. The Nightwatch.js is compatible with Sauce Labs. It supports Sauce Labs. Again, browser stack for us was more of a choice because of existence, the history of our clients, and they had already licensing and some of their things defined there. But definitely compatible and can be run there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what was the reason for choosing browser stack, because aren't a lot of those test capabilities available to Selenium?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, and I don't know actually if it is, but
I don't know either.
yeah, I don't know.
From my understanding of Selenium, which is very, very.
The only thing is like Selenium is going to run them like locally in the machine, so you would have to have the browsers in the machine. Is my understanding of Selenium, but and the idea of being able to have the option of running things locally for a developer pretty quickly and doing the base tests, functional testing, and then doing a full-on test with a full list of browser compatibility requirements on a cloud-based system with parallel with all the features it has was pretty attractive to us and to our.
Because you gotta make sure IE6 works.
I didn't want to say it, but thanks, Brian. But yeah, no good. I don't know. Is anybody using Selenium for their tests? Anyone who's using Selenium for their tests and want to?
Yeah, it's kind of a combo. Selenium, browser stack. I've been in an office that uses Sauce Labs as well. So
Okay.
and yeah, pretty much across the board.
Use Java.
Homegrown test as well.
Yeah.
I've used Jet and Spock and robots as well. So the nice thing about all the Nightwatch as well is like all these frameworks are built on top of Selenium, and so it just makes Selenium easier to use. And
yeah.
Whether you know Python or you know Ruby or you know JavaScript, you pick one of the frameworks that you know how to write code in. So
I think the fast locally you can use Phantom.js to WebDriver mode. It's got a ghost driver.
Uh-huh.
And it's really, really quick. If that's not good enough, you can use Chrome driver, which doesn't actually start Selenium at all. It's just Chrome in a WebDriver mode.
Yep.
You can accept all the connections.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of really good options for us.
Yeah.
I think the challenge and the opportunity is keeping up with it and making sure that your client buys in on continuing it, as well as or your environment, your org, whatever, that you buy in on doing it.
Yeah.
Because it does take time and
yeah.
Schedule that's not very
the schedule, the time to do it, to run it, even, you know, as much as cost savings is still like a hard sell. It's like, I'm not getting, what am I getting? You know?
Yeah.
And then also for us, we have a bunch of front-end developers working on a bunch of different projects. So just standardizing.
Right,
For
that's
us, just
Yeah.
kind of the most generic tool set to start from and say, okay, this is what we use. And every client has
some of the
what they want, so they
Yes.
kind of deviate, but we can at least come in and say, we've had success here, and we're looking at these types of numbers or something.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at, for AEM, we're looking at training. So how do you get people in? How do we break these things up? How do we, if we need senior people to review people who are in for their work, we want tools that will help us evaluate how healthy we are.
Yes.
Yeah, being like part of being able to run this in different platform at the end of the day is also a good thing for us, definitely.
We enjoy browser stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You play the videos afterwards,
Did you?
after to close it, after
Yeah,
the launch.
I
Look at some of the videos.
I just put on, like, oh yes, browser stuff. Not that I enjoy it, but no.
Remember the good times?
It was
Remember this
all the
one?
time. It was a good time, yes.
All right. So, yeah, I think this is it. Again, this is my contact information. If you have more questions, that I'd be happy to forward to the right person to answer in our group. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. If anybody, if we survive by community members volunteering to share experiences, to share stories, to share case studies. If anybody would like to share a story, share a project they're doing internally, something they've learned, lessons learned, or would like to host, we'd love to hear from you. I think I keep saying, give a little, get a lot. We've gotten a tremendous amount out of this community. We've learned a huge amount. It's accelerated our learning and how well we execute on AEM projects. And thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks.